Alrighty. So hopefully I'm coming through okay. Good morning, everybody. Saw folks coming in, so I figured I would jump in myself and start a little bit early. We got Cody, GM Cody. We got From the Hilt in here. Hey, Chris. We have RW Bishop. and so it's another Sunday. It's another stream. I don't have a topic for this morning. Mage's Musings, good morning. My tongue is tied this week for whatever reason, so I'm likely to be stammering all over myself. Don't have a topic for today. That's why it's sort of a chill, just sort of ask me anything, question and answer if you want to pop on and just kind of shoot the shit about gaming. That's all good. Um, there are some things I had on my mind, but I decided not to because kind of hot buttony things, or at least they seem to be. And I didn't really want to get into it this morning. Uh, Mages Munich, yes. Well, I appreciate you showing up, Chris. Wish I had more to offer for you this morning, but yeah, it's just sort of a chill kind of morning where we're just gonna talk about things, probably gaming things, but things. All right. So hope everybody's had a good week. Um, it's been an okay week for me. I mean, work's been chill. I got a chance to look at a couple things. Added another game to my m- micro game collection. I already had Ultra Warrior and added Operation Cerberus. Always intrigued by these old games, but was never able to get them when I was a kid. Not to mention, I didn't understand them when I was a kid. Seeing them up on the pegs um, is, they were this thing, like they were too small to equate in my brain as a whole game, I think. And so I didn't get them. They didn't have dice in them. Were they a supplement? Um, I'd seen big bookcase games like Avalon Hill games, Panzer Blitz, Squad Leader, things like that. Um, and I had picked up Imperium myself way over my head at the time. In fact, I remember my parents. I remember it fondly. Fondly. It's one of the rare times my dad showed up and uh, wanted to take me out to impress me, whatever. So he had to drive to Spokane, Washington to get a license for his truck. He was driving truck at the time. And so my mom and myself and him, we all piled into his rig and drove to Spokane. And being the 8, 9, 10-ish year old nerd that I was, if I was going to be in a new city, I was going to find a game store. And so while my dad was waiting in line to get his licensing for his vehicle done or whatever, for all I know, he could have been paying a ticket. Who knows? Um, we wandered around, found a game store, wandered in. I saw a box that had spaceships and it was all about an intergalactic war and stuff. And my mom and my dad, divorced as they were since I was 2, um, both came to a consensus that you know, this game looked way over your head because it's talking about bookkeeping and all that stuff. And they were right. But I loved that game when I had it. Don't have it anymore. Um, it all the different ships, the 2 different fleets, the star map, and all that. My friends and I made it work. We actually came up with our own system for it that made sense. I think we just played it more as a battles strategy game without the bookkeeping. Um, but yeah, it was so yeah. I've always liked those counter based games, and I've played a few of them over the years. But for whatever reason, those little polybagged micro capsule mini games, they all went by different names, usually sort of trademarked or branded by the company that was making them. Um, they just missed me. But as I've grown up, grown up. I'm 52. I think grown up has sailed. But in the ensuing years, um, I have come to appreciate them. Now, a lot of them are insanely priced, way outside of the area that the realm that I'm comfortable paying or able to pay in some cases. But some of them are really affordable. Ultra Warrior cost me, I think, $10, um, on eBay, and it's a nice little dual game. It's a 1 to 4 player. Each person controls a single warrior. You have a host of little weapons. Um, the terrain changes by game because the map is actually a blank map with the terrain being created by the counters that are in the game. So that's a fun one. Cerberus, I don't know if I'll ever actually get a chance to play it, but I love reading these for the historical value and just learning the systems that they generated. And they're a lesson in compact game design. Ultra Warrior is 16 pages long. Um, Cerberus, I think, is maybe a little longer than that. But all of these games have these little pamphlets. Now, granted, the writing is small. The typeset is small, but they managed to squeeze a lot of really evocative background in most of them. Within a page, you've got this setting that you're like, I want to play in that. And then charts and tables go a long way. And the very technical writing that they often use helps them get a very concise set of rules without a lot of fluff. Very much show, here's rule 1, rule 1.1, rule 1.1.5. If you've ever played Starfleet battles, you know what I'm talking about. Pursuant to, I mean, Starfleet battles rule systems are about as convoluted as Stardates, which is fitting. Anyways, that was one of the things that I managed to do. I also managed to score um, the both an original copy and then this and a reprint of, but the reprint's not really a score. You can just buy it, of Wondrous Weapons by Judges Guild, and that was sort of filling a nostalgia hole. I had acquired Wondrous Weapons in 4th grade. I borrowed it from a friend while I still had it. He moved and I was never able to get it back to him. So I acquired it not through ill-gotten means, but not really off the shelf. So it was one of those chance things. Over the years, that just above newsprint, staple bound, paper covered book just didn't survive. All told, with the outer pages getting lost over time, I think it's down like 8 pages, my original copy. I still have it, but it's not complete. So I was able to find a reasonably priced used version of the original. It's in good condition. And while doing that, I stumbled upon the fact that Judges Guild still sells it in reprint form. It's a print on demand, not offset print or anything. It's perfect bound, but it does not have any of the very rudimentary color interior pieces that the original has, and it's recolored the outside cover. So it's very obviously a different item. I really appreciate that they did that with the reprint, because there are some reprints, print on demands, that are close enough to the original that when you see them on a site like eBay, um, it's hard to tell if they're an original or not unless you really know. And so it's easy for folks to get taken, but there's no mistaking the reprint from the original. Um, and so Wondrous Weapons, if you're not familiar with it, if you're a D&D player or a D&D like player, run out to Judges Guild, drop your $10, I think it is, and pick up a copy. It is front to back catalog of pre-made magic weapons, as well as wand staffs and wands. I love the fact that they have a whole book full of weapons that are, okay for, some of them can be depending on the weapon type. Got everything covered for fighters, druids, clerics, rogues, rangers. All of that are covered in there. But then they also included rod, staffs, and wands, so the wizard could have some fun. So I appreciate that. Every weapon has stats, special items, intelligence, and ego uh, for uh, uh, for for the weapon, I should say. And each one has a full history with an illustration, so every item is unique. In addition, it has quick generation charts for magic weapons, and a conversion system in the back for converting every weapon in that game to systems based on their core die mechanic and not specific systems. So you can convert whatever, because back in the day, I don't know if you're old like me, and you probably remember Judges Guild and a lot of other companies that were doing third party productions for D&D specifically often adopted their own system, and this was more of an obfuscation than anything. It was just a way to not get slapped, and then they would provide you with conversion rules, because very rarely do I remember most of those companies having an actual game to go with the system. Um, but they then would provide a conversion chart in the back, and that conversion chart allowed you to, oh yeah, you're doing a D100. Let's say you're trying to use these weapons in MERP. It has a D100 conversion chart in there. If you're trying to do it in a game system that does a 2d6, it has a conversion chart. In that conversion chart are 2d6 bonus mechanics. And it was really cool. But also, random tables for just generating items on the cuff, just a really good thing. And in the beginning, there's also even sort of I don't know if you call it an adventure or a location, but there's a fully mapped and statted out location that is a magic items shop slash warehouse, um, which I have to laugh about because that seems to be something that a lot of old schoolers like to point and grumble about the new style of gaming. And this is a Judges Guild product. This is all the way back to 1980, whatever. And here you have a building with a concentration of magic items where people can buy and sell them. So, um, anyways, it is a great product. And it's, if you don't, I mean, I loved it. Those weapons still appear in my game. I've even written a few of them up for 5e. In fact, one of the guys, the rogue in my current game, is carrying trefoil, which is this it's interesting. It looks like a pocket knife with multiple blades, and depending on the blade that you have out, it has a different magic ability. But also, the item mocks your enemies, which I found really amusing. So it actually causes a penalty to your enemies when it mocks them. So it's kind of cool. Uh, let's see. Absolutely. Nothing like holding a book in your hands. You know, I went through a PDF phase. I think that was partially just motivated by my budget. Um, but I realized over time, and yeah, those are good picks. Those mini games, Cody. I really do want to get more. I have my watch list is growing ever longer. Uh, it's kind of sad. I've just got them all on watch on eBay. Um, Yeah, well, I happen to actually get some royalties from my miniatures company, so I was able to spend some money. Um, all right, so yeah, that's kind of what I've picked up. Um, let's see. Oh, the neat thing is when I ordered my Judges Guild stuff, unexpectedly, also fun was I love when you get personalizations from folks. So. Um, This was the cardboard that was keeping it in place. Um, and this is from Judges Guild directly. And then this was on the outside of the envelope. And I'm going to try not to dox myself, but so there you go. I love when companies take that that sort of approach. And even the little sales slip that they put in there, because there's like a little, basically a little promotional, almost like a business card, had a message from the owner of Judges Guild in a little peace sign, because a lot of old gamers are hippies. But that's one of the fun things about dealing with small companies. Um, there's several like British miniatures companies that I've ordered from in the past, and along with my minis came little candies. It's a personal touch. Um, what am I planning on playing in Cody's game? I did not know for sure when it's happening, and I haven't made a character yet. So, um, when I have more information on it, because I only really have broached the question with him whether or not he had an opening and all of that. So, uh, yeah, depending on when it is, I will, and if I'm able to get into the games, I will definitely do so. Um, but I also have I have other obligations on Sundays too, so I got to make sure that it works. Like every other Sunday, I've got my noon to 3 game where I play in with Saxius from the old Geek Stream, and then on the alternating Sundays, I run my game from uh, like 5 to 9 Central Time. So we'll see. Okay, well, I will give it some thought. It's not like I don't talk to Cody at all. So I'm sure it'll come up. Welcome and good morning, Grumpy Old Slan. Uh, oh, in other news, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's if you're a miniatures painting person, a viral meme, but not viral, a video has been going around of a cool technique for using silicone fidget toys with the kind of the reusable bubble wrap type, um, as pink cups for small little troughs for mixing and having little bits of paint out on your table, instead of using a palette. Um, and it seems kind of kitschy. It works. I got this guy, and this was given to me by my kid ages ago because my kid collects fidget toys, and I'm a dinosaur person because I never actually outgrew that phase. I don't know why I would want to. Dinosaurs are awesome. They're the closest things in the world that we've ever had to true dragons and real monsters. Anyways, um, it works. Um, the silicone likes to let go of the paint, and you have lots of little troughs. So you can just, when you're done, you just pop it out, and all the paint just bloop comes right out. So there's your hobby tip for today. Go get yourself a $1 silicone fidget toy and use it for your paint palette, your paint cups now. So yeah, and even this one's even kind of cool because it's got little flat areas too. So if I didn't want to, work in the cups specifically, there's still enough real estate to uh, do the cups. I have been doing some sculpting and some work on my Turnip 28 army. I've got this little dude. This is actually a dwarfish type character who is wearing a giant turnip as his clothing, or not turnip, but giant clove of garlic. Because I have my Allium Alliance, which is a Turnip 28 army that is onion and garlic themed, because they believe that the onions and the garlic that grow around their village is what has protected them from the root. And yeah, so they whether they're correct or not, they are they believe so. And so I've got a host of converted figures that have garlic hats, and some of them have garlic laurels that they're wearing around their necks and stuff. Um, so that's been a fun project. And I also have this really big guy. This is going to be, I think, my leader. He's converted out of a monk or a cleric from Reaper Bones. And yes, he has a giant, deformed garlic on his head, and a beard that has garlic woven into it. But yeah, that's a project I've been working on this week. I also have one of my standard bearer who is protected by this guy with a large cudgel in a leek hat because another allium. Yes, leeks are included. Good morning,
Leeks.
bear.
Good morning. What leeks are we doing? What kind of leek? Are we doing Welsh leeks? Are we doing Korean green onions? What are we doing?
Well, this one was a hat, so
I
because I was
don't know
going
about
with
the
my
leek
measures.
hat. What is a leek hat?
Well, leek hats are what you wear when you believe that the alliums protect you from the root in Turnip 28. Anyways, how's it going, man?
It's a Sunday. I did some writing. I'm cooking some food, and now I'm just like, ooh, Eli's on. Let's go talk to Eli. He's always an interesting conversation.
Today is a no topic, kind of just chit chatty kind of day.
Excellent. I'd like to pontificate my theories about transcendentalism, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
I think it's bollocks. There we are. Done. Thank you.
Yeah. I was almost ready to rant this morning on a topic, but I decided otherwise.
May I ask the topic?
Safety tools.
Are you pro, con, or don't give a shit?
I am on the pro side with a sprinkling of get over yourselves, those of you who don't like them because you've been using them all along.
Okay, fair enough.
Now that the cat's out of the bag, and I hate to vague book, TLDR, most safety tool discussions, I think, come across as more of an affront to people than they actually are, because they are being presented in a collected format that is very concise, and by the nature of that becomes some sort of a, like I said, an affront to a lot of folks, where they're like, oh, we don't need this. I'm like, but you've been using them. You just came to them organically. And so I feel like a lot of older gamers especially are the ones who are kind of the ones who are bothered by it. And being amongst those older gamers, I realize that a lot of the things that they're talking about have been covered in games decades ago, but also a lot of groups, especially groups who play with friends and tight gaming groups, come across these organically. We don't need to talk about lines and veils or X-cardy things or anything like that, because as friends, we already know each other's limits, each other's traumas. If your dad was run over by a semi and then knocked into the ocean and eaten by a shark, we're not going to cover that in the game because I know you, right?
Very specific thing, but yeah, okay.
But yeah, my point being, like,
Yeah.
if you have a lady gamer in your group and you know that she has been assaulted,
Yeah.
you're probably going to avoid it, right?
Oh,
if
God,
you
yes.
know her, right?
Yeah.
The safety tools, in my mind, and I'm pretty sure based on the way I've read most of the documentation that's ever been presented on them, is for strangers. Convention games, pickup games, online gaming where you don't know who's on the other side of the screen but you really want to play. They are a tool. So yeah, I mean, I feel like they are things that people have always used. We just don't call them safety tools, and we don't have them in big lists that make them seem scary. A common safety tool is, what the fuck are you doing? When you're playing at the table and the DM starts going off on some sort of weird ass tangent, and you're like, "What the fuck is this?" That's a safety tool. It's like an X card. It's just more colorful than an X card, right? A lot of these safety tools are presented for people who might be coming into gaming in a much more casual basis or just off the street. They a lot of players, I think, forget that gaming now is much more accessible and just people will just come into it, no prior experience with gaming, no experience with the subculture, and they want to play. There's a certain amount of personal responsibility in those. Like, don't join a game, don't sit down at a game of Hole and expect it to be rated G. Don't play Cult and expect it to be PG. It's at the same time, again, a lot of these things are specifically stated elements that people who have decent human interpersonal skills already do and know, but also that a lot of just experienced gamers have picked up over time. I remember gaming back in the 90s, the earliest days of computer gaming, when I was on the Muds and the Muxes and stuff and the Mushes, the old text-based games. And there was a commonly accepted rule, which was fade to black. If something came up in a role-playing scenario that you didn't want to play out, you would just declare fade to black. You would do your roles, determine what actually happened in that situation, and get on with it. You didn't necessarily want to play out all the nuts and bolts. And it could be anything. I mean, a lot of times, people were just like, you know what? I don't have a lot of time tonight. Can we just fade to black this social encounter and just figure out if it works or not? Because a lot of people were just coming on. So I really feel it's weird when people get all bent out of shape out of a toolkit that is there for people to use if they want or if they feel they need it. If you don't want to use it, or you don't feel like you need to use it, then don't. But don't go screaming and ranting about like this game sucks because it talks about safety tools in the beginning of in the forward, which is what kind of touched this off. Somebody was talking about like, oh, I'm gonna have to give this game a pass. It talks about safety tools and it's very much anti-capitalist. Okay.
Yeah, to be fair, it was Che Guevara, the role-playing game. I mean, come on.
In this case,
Bolivian adventure.
Funny enough, it was actually a retooling of TMNT and Other Strangeness that's out. I can't remember the name of the game, but so it seems really weird because, like I said, back in the day when we would play, we had safety tools, but we just they were just the things that we did. Like if somebody was really being dumb at the table, I mean, hell, one of the players' all-time best safety tools is just getting up from the table and leaving. Yeah. I think there's also a certain amount of theoretical misplaced concern over them, in that when people consider the theory of safety tools, is that they think about players taking control of the game or really using the power of the safety tool to shut down play.
Well, I'm going to devil's advocate this when you're done, just because I think, there is some stuff, but Yield Geek just hit a point that I was going to make for sure.
Well, that's true, but that's people being jerks, and that's the other side of the coin.
That's the screaming mass right now. So right now we have to deal with the reality that this is a culture war issue. It's become a culture war issue, and it's going to be a culture war issue. And sadly, we are currently still embroiled in the fourth turning culture war that does not seem to want to fucking end, no matter what anybody says. And to devil's advocate it, for some of these people, it's okay. Let me rephrase it. It's like I say about Jesus. It's not him I have the problem with. It's his fans. Right? Like, that's the thing. It's the people who are fanatical about things that are always going to be the issue with stuff. And a lot of these safety tool people, like Janine, basically taking people to task for not using them, or other people who have really shouted people down for it, there's going to be an appropriate and equal response that's going to come from the opposed side. At the end of the day, I think if we sat down rationally and talked to each other, we would find that, absolutely safety tools have a place and they could be useful.
And that's kind of the position I take myself.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that position. It's a more centrist position. You lean left, I lean. I don't know what the hell I lean. I think
it's just a matter of fact to me. Honestly, I mean, and I get what you're saying, and I was getting to that point. There are on both sides, because I already mentioned the guys who want to just read because they even read the word safety tool in a paragraph in a game, right? The flip side of that is the people are like, if you're not using safety tools, you're some sort of horrible ogre. That's also bullshit, because that is completely devoid of everything I've just mentioned. Like, you don't know me and my group. For all you know, the only people I play with is people I've known for 25 years or more.
Yeah, exactly.
And therefore, your safety tools are bullocks, because I've probably created some of the trauma that they have safety tools for. It's like, I don't need safety tools when playing with my kids, because I know my kids. I don't, but at the same time, you're right. There's always going to be that other side, and it's unfortunate that there are those folks out there. My friend Jason, who was on here a while back, I mentioned in the post stream conversation, he has horrible luck. He goes to shops and just gets cornered by the extreme end of part of that argument, and he's been like browbeat over inclusion and all of that in his games by total strangers for no reason, like just because he is there. I get it, and it sucks, and it's neither extreme is good for the hobby. You know me. I'm the first guy who sit there and go, all right, that crazy, overly magical world that you're complaining about, that you think is all modern in 5th edition. Congratulations, it's also Mystara. It's and so yeah, that was the rant I was not gonna make today. But welcome to my dead talk. Let's see. Gonna go through a few. I think Grumpy's Land, I don't think it's... So I've read most of the presentations that have come out on this, and I will say this. I don't think anybody ever writes from a position and purposefully includes information to try and undermine their position. Even if it's not some heavily argumentative position, but just an informative position, you're going to generally want to present the merits of your system. And I think when you're reading anything, and especially a set of rules or options or anything like that, you do, as the reader, have a certain personal responsibility to take from it what you will, and kind of interpret what you're reading. So I don't think that I haven't run into any of them that I feel that have presented an all or nothing. Most of them are presenting options. So there is that. Okay, Bear. All right, so let's see. And Geek, we already got to this. And that's just a fundamentally flawed position. That is honestly clickbait.
Well, there's something else though that needs to be addressed on this, which is there are good intentions and there are bad executions. And when you start getting into a position where people start codifying proper social behavior, that becomes an element of social control or cultist. It's almost cultish to me. And it's saying, if you don't do things this way, then we have a problem, mister.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't need that in my role-playing games. I don't need anyone to tell me how to GM. I don't need anyone to tell me how to run my games. You might want to give me advice. That's great. But don't start dictating to me. You know what I mean? And that's the sad part of this tools is it got sucked into a dictatorial group. And then, of course, the super libertarian right guys responded by going, don't tread on me, pew, pew, pew. And it just turned into a big, ugly mess where there was a good message, but it got lost in the quagmire.
Yeah, I find it funny that one of the most commonly quoted and sourced, sources for safety tools was Monty Cook, who is an old timer gamer, game designer from back in the day. I find it amusing that his probably, I mean, like you said, good intentions. Monty Cook is a long in the tooth gamer guy who's built a lot of the stuff that we all came up on, right? And he was just extolling accumulated wisdom, from that he has come up with over time. And there's a few things like yes, you can use them and you can't. I would say that the presentation of the tools is useful especially for folks who maybe aren't comfortable communicating their distaste. I've watched people sit at tables and get uncomfortable. Usually in games that I'm around, not in games I run, because I'm hyper aware of people. Like if I see somebody kind of shutting down, I'm like, are you all right?
Yeah.
Which I think is a safety tool, right? I mean, that's an organic safety tool. It's also just being a human being. That's just being a empathetic person who is not a misanthrope. And I unfortunately have met too many misanthropic, however you want to pronounce it, gamers out there who are of that weird mindset of I'm going to run my game and I don't give a shit what you think. There's a difference between I'm going to run my game the way I'm going to run my game because that's the way I run my games, but they often take it to the next level, like very, I don't know, antagonistic. Anyways,
it is what it is, and there's always going to be in anything, and I can tell you this having worked in the film industry, radio, television, private security, bodyguard work, bouncer, there are always going to be these puritanical people who are like, we have the one true way and everyone else is wrong. And in some lines of work I'm in, they got a punch in the mouth for that. In other lines of work I was in, they became producers and started dictating things on set. It's all a question of how much air they're given to play with. At the end of the day, I play with strangers. I avoid certain topics in my games because I don't want to have them as part of the experience for me. I don't want them. I'm a huge cross-gender role-playing thing. I don't want to have guys sitting around playing girls. I don't want to have girls sitting around playing guys, because in all my years of gaming, there's never been anyone who's done it well, and they mostly just play exaggerated stereotypes that are just really sad and silly on both sides of that spectrum.
No.
But that's a me choice, and that's something in my game. I would never want to codify that into and here's my manifesto on how you play a game,
True. I mean, you would not, because I mean, and I don't think necessarily that, using Monty Cook for example again, I don't think that he was trying to preach when he did so.
No.
I really believe that he was trying to genuinely put forward a set of tools. Interestingly enough, a lot of those safety tools were, and the ones I mentioned for like the fade to black and all of that, those were really first kind of trickled out during the World of Darkness stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The World of Darkness games really leaned heavy, especially in the LARP side of things, leaned heavily into safety tools.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think half the problem, honestly, I think is just the fact that they were given that name, and for some reason, personal safety seems to be a weird bugbear nowadays. And we have safe spaces, and we have safe conduct, and all of that. And I think that just sets people off. So when they named it safety tools, they already did themselves damage, right?
Sure.
If they would have just kept it in the category of, positive behavior for the table,
Yeah, social guidelines for having a positive playing experience.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I guess such is the double-edged sword of buzzwordy titles, right? Um,
Yeah.
but oh look, there goes that little asshole on a little moped that likes to buzz through my neighborhood all the day.
Well, look, I think Monty Cook did miss one vital part, though, and this would probably show his slightly out of touch with modern times thinking, in that he thought he was providing a helpful tool, not realizing that there were plenty of zealots out there just waiting for some scripture to fall from heaven. And as he is a rather notorious luminary in the industry, it had power for them. It had, see, Monty Cook says it, therefore this is now canon,
Yeah.
So I think that might have been the issue on that situation as well. And you got to be careful with what you say sometimes, because there's always going to be people around who can what is that line? Oh God, there's a line from, I think it's Firefly, which is, nothing is more dangerous than a man who thinks he's right with God, And if these people see their philosophical stance as godly or divine, or in that same part of the brain, they can justify some pretty awful behavior as, the right way to do things. And if someone who they see as valuable or respectable or legitimate says something that they can then use, they will.
Yeah.
That becomes a dangerous situation to be in.
I agree. I mean, it's, unfortunately, that's
Human
always
nature.
it's a human nature thing, and this is the other part, is that if safety tools had existed as a document in a book
Mm-hmm.
and not then been able to be screamed about over the internet,
Yeah.
it probably wouldn't have been as big a deal.
Mm-hmm.
People would have been reading it before they heard somebody screaming at them from the screen about it, and likely have been absorbing it in a much more neutral fashion.
Oh, for
They would
sure.
have been able. They would have been absorbing it. They would have been reading it. They would have, comprehended it or not, and then they would have interpreted it and done what we all do with every gaming thing that we read. We take from it what we need and what we can use, and then we move on. We don't generally. Most of us that I know don't read a book for a game, regardless of the topic, or for gaming, and go, this is exactly the way I'm going to do it no matter what. Just this, and this is the only way. And we throw out what we don't like and we use what we want. So, this is, I seem to have simultaneously hit the same point when everybody else did. The name is damning.
Yes.
And that was, it's just, call it something. What's funny is, Sergeant Mushroom, my buddy Jim, known him since high school. He's on here, and he had asked me on Facebook where this came up. He's like, "What's safety tools?" He hadn't even heard the term, and I tried to explain it to him, he never responded. But the thing is, it pointed out that there's a lot of people who just don't know what they are, or haven't even heard the term. And I think if you explain it to somebody, like, this is just a way, these are just mechanisms that we can put in place when we need them to reduce the amount of friction at the table. I think the problem with with safety tools, this now become the topic of the video, but is also, I think they're part of a greater conversation. It's not just about avoiding touchy topics. It's also about not being a jerk at the table and not being, a dick DM or a troublesome player. Those are also problematic. And I think that the safety tools needs to be lumped into that greater conversation of the social contract at the table, where we're sitting down to play a game. We're all here for mutual enjoyment, and we need to respect that.
No, I have no issue with dickish behavior, but then I am by religion a dick, and that's okay. I have a problem with assholish behavior, and that will always be my problem.
Tomato, tomato. I mean, you
No,
make a
not for me.
distinction.
I split that hair as a very strong distinction because it's very simple. Yeah, dicks can be a pain in the ass, but Jesus, assholes are the worst. Because as they
That is
said,
true.
with Team America, they just want to shit on everything. It's like, God, stop. But that said, first time I encountered safety rules was back in the halcyon days of the 1990s when my buddy was putting together a Ninjas and Super Spies campaign, and he handed out a document with the 10 commandments of the campaign. And one of them was, "Thou shalt not be a heel." And I thought that was fantastic. I was like, I love that. Letting people know up front, if you're just going to act like a jerk the whole time you play and your character's going to be self-absorbed and fuck everybody over and you're not going to be part of the team.
I'm a lone wolf.
Yeah, I'm a lone wolf, plays by his own rules, lives on the edge. I also happen to have a trench coat, katana, and a fedora.
Says the guy who's never read an actual lone wolf character and realizes what makes him interesting. See Wolverine.
Exactly. And it's like, okay, Katana Dan, you do what you need to do, but you're not doing it in this game. It's as simple as that. And that's something else I think is another thing we need to come into, is because the people who are advocating safety tools and demanding them are the same people who are saying you can't say no to any character class or lineage, race, ancestry, whatever you want to call it now. They're the same ones who get, what, you restrict races in your game? Oh, I wouldn't play. You restrict classes, but you're the same ones who want to restrict what I can do with your list of tools that you've approved. I don't think for these people, not all, but for this subsect of people, it doesn't come down to being about safety. It comes down to about being special, being in control, and influencing everything around them to their tastes. And I think those people are just as toxic as the opposite head of that coin, which are the people who just want to be edgelords and run D&D like they're playing pool.
I think it's important to realize, though, even in the absence of the discussion of safety tools, though, those people are going to be those people, and they're going to be a problem at your table regardless. Safety tools is not going to create problem players. It is maybe going to give them new language and new tools, but they were going to do that anyways. They're the guy who's going to sit at guy's going to sit at the table and whinge because, I wanted that sword. My character's supposed to be the hero of the story. I am they're going to be that guy. They're going to be the person who's like, this role, I hate all this role playing. I just want to fight something. They're that guy too. It comes down to behavior, and it comes down to, I think, remembering that there are people at your table. And a lot of this, I'm going to go back to the beginning of my rant. For a lot of us, it just happens organically.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about the game you're going to play, you present it to people, and then they either want to play it or not. Yeah. But I know that, like, for example, Geek and I have kind of gone not back and forth in an argumentative way, but we've talked about this before. For example, I've seen a lot of people like, well, if I'm running a horror, you see this on the Call of Cthulhu groups a lot. If I'm running Call of Cthulhu, you should expect me to, da 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 da. When you sit down at my table, I'm like, no. Horror is a huge, broad spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So if I tell you I'm going to run a horror game, then that could be anything from cheesy running around with a chainsaw in the woods, teenagers dying at Camp Crystal Lake, to Hellraiser, or beyond. So
except it's Call of Cthulhu. It's not. I'm not playing chill.
Call of Cthulhu is still very broad.
Is it though? The mythos really? Because there's kind of a theme that runs through it, which is you're going to go bloodshed insane.
Is based on not just Lovecraft, but all of his contemporaries.
Sure.
Lovecraft himself was remarkably demure by modern standards in his description of things. Yeah. Everything was unspeakable, unknowable, nondescript. And so there isn't a lot that's really going to make I've never been, as I need to use the vernacular, squicked out by Call of Cthulhu, by Lovecraft. I've never read any of the worst thing that gets me about reading Lovecraft is some of his outdated ideas in language. There's nothing I've ever read of his that's made me go, ew, or I feel so uncomfortable. I mean, and so other people might have a totally different feel for Lovecraft. But I think that's the problem with, for example, presenting this as a horror game or even a Lovecraft game. One of John's favorite scenarios is very heavy into body horror.
Yeah.
And that's not a constant in Lovecraft's work. A lot of Lovecraft's work is just, I found stuff out that I'm not supposed to know. I'm freaking out. Help me, help me. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, if you look at Shadow Innsmouth, it's a pretty bog standard. I visited a small town. Things went weird. I got to get out of here. Story.
Mhm.
You know, with frogfish
Yeah,
people.
but that's where it gets the creepy part is when you start getting into the mythology of the fish people. You know, you start going, "Oh, these people are weird," and then you get into their dark nature with each other and the relationships and all that, and that's where it becomes Cthulhuid. That's where it
Yes,
becomes Lovecraftian, and that's where it becomes disturbing. It's not the body horror that's disturbing; it's the psychological horror that's disturbing.
but different people are going to feel differently about that. Some people are not going to
Absolutely.
be bothered at all by fish people who can only reproduce by breeding with humans and creating hybrids.
Mhm.
That's almost folklorically standard to where for me
Mhm.
it's like, okay, another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah. No, no, I hear you.
the body horror is going to get to a lot of people, you know,
Yeah.
because people have different elements of body horror. I have a player in my current group who is brand new and I don't know her very well. So when she's my friend's girlfriend, she came to the game, she was interested in playing, but because I don't have any history with her, I spent a little bit of time asking her about things that might bother her because I know my play style. And she's an interesting person. She does not like to watch or listen to horror, terror stuff,
Mhm.
but she has no problem reading it or having it described.
Mhm. Mhm.
So she can read Stephen King, she can't watch Stephen King. Yeah,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, no,
and
I
that's
understand.
and so like I think these are important distinctions when you're meeting new players. And it's not always an option to where you have a lot of time to get to know them.
Mhm.
If you do have the time, it can't hurt. But again, that's kind of more of an example of an organic safety tool kind of thing where I'm just going to spend a little bit of time getting to know this new player.
Okay, but
I know my game style, and again, I think that's an organic way of doing it rather than going down a checklist. Yeah, which
okay, but
makes
look at
makes it
it.
imposing to people.
There is a responsibility or an onus that behooves the player as well to not go for things that they know they're going to have an issue with. I do not like mysteries. I do not like heists. If you say to me, "Hey, I'm running a game. I want you to play." Cool. What's the game about? You're going to be doing a heist. No, I'm good, man. Thanks.
Yeah,
I'm not going to show up to the game and be like, can we do something else? Oh my god! Blah, blah, blah." But there's a segment of gamer who knows that you're running Cthulhu and then shows up with a laundry list of things you can't have in the game, thereby restricting your ability to run the game for the other people because of their specific needs. And this is a form of narcissism that we're seeing much more prevalent since the advent of social media. And
yes,
there's been a lot of really good documentaries and scientific psychological papers written about it, and lots of stuff talked about it. The problem is no one has the solution yet. But I grew up, Gen X latchkey kids, but I was also taught if you don't want to do something, don't do it. If you don't want to play baseball, don't show up to the baseball game and say, "Can we play soccer?" You know what I mean? Don't put yourself
yeah,
in the position. And I think there are a number of people, not all, but a number of people who are on that side of just, I want to role play, but I want to also dictate everything. And it's like, okay, narcissist, go away. We're
yeah,
playing Cthulhu, and there are going to be pods bursting out of people's stomachs after they get inseminated by frogmen. And that's just the way the game's going to be. And if you have a problem with that, maybe you shouldn't be here.
yeah. It seems like a weird time for that to happen too, because gaming being so big, it seems like the number of games and the ability to find the game that you want and you
Yeah.
need should be simple enough as but of course you mentioned, yeah, like you said, it's a narcissistic thing rather
Yeah.
than an actual rational thing. Rationally speaking, if you sit down at a table and you're like, I don't like this, bye. I mean, that
Yeah.
should be the end of it, right? Credits roll. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like Hunger
I
says,
mean,
do
I've
things.
literally done that at a. I mean, flipping it to miniatures gaming. I've sat down at a table, set my army up,
Mm-hmm.
realized the guy across the table was an absolute just dill hole, and said, you know what? Fuck this. You can take the win. Swept my army off the table into my box and walked out the door. Because I
Yeah,
wasn't going to spend the next 2 hours across the table from this gloating, absolute just asshat of a player, because I'm not there to win. I'm there to play the game and have fun. You know, it's miniatures games to me are very much like role playing games to me. I'm there to like enjoy the hobby, push
yeah.
things around, maybe banter across the table, make some jokes. If I can pull a win off, great. I'm not all that competitive, you know. But when I haven't even set up my army and you're already trash talking me and you're being a dick about it, like not even a dick, to use your qualifications, an asshole about it, I'm done. I don't want to play the next game, the next 2 hours. And again, as a rational person, I'm just like, nope, bye.
Yeah.
Enjoy,
No,
take the W, dude. You win this one. Yeah.
I'm just enough of a dick that I would explain to him in detail why I'm leaving and that he needs to be a better human being. And by the way, deodorant is your friend. And also, you can not be a dick and talk to girls without having to give your credit card number. Have a nice day, but that's me. I'm going to get that shot in before I go.
Yeah. Well,
What
yeah, I
I
mean,
can't.
it is well recorded that you're a much larger dick than I am.
Oh yeah, no. I'm an absolute. I'm compensating for a tiny penis, clearly, but I don't care, and that's the point. I don't give a shit because at the end of the day, I have had to in my life police people at their worst to keep them from killing themselves and others, and therefore I have a very different relationship with the human race, and I don't see it as I need to worry about you. Are you hurt? Are you bleeding? Do you need help? Your fifis are hurt. You're not feeling good about something. Okay, I'm not a therapist. Let me give you the number of a therapist you can call. But I'm not going to do that. What I can't stand are people who are so self-absorbed and so self-centered and so self-focused that they must impact everyone else in the room with their nonsense. You have to self-police. You have to sometimes say, this isn't for me. Like you saying, packing up your game and going and saying, you know what, not for me. This isn't going to work. And that I can respect. Even if I think it's a bit of a shit move to just get up and leave, I'm still going to go, at least he got up and left and didn't sit here and cause a big drama pile for us all to have to deal with.
Yeah. Again, for me, that's an extreme case for me, but I mean,
yeah.
The guy,
hey, but the extreme cases make the best stories, man. Come on.
If you were there, this guy was a real tool, and it was just not. I mean, I've played against guys who were really full of themselves, and that was a riot. I remember playing a game against this guy who was just so full of himself and his chaos army that in Warhammer that he was gonna kick my ass. This is a guy we used to call Redneck John. So the shop had too many Johns. There was Little John, who was like the kid who came in. There was Ratskin John, who played Ratskins in Necromunda, and then there was Redneck John, who was a redneck. Redneck John was volatile, but in a good-natured way, and his competitiveness was, while a bit abrasive at times, never in the realm of being a true asshole. And he was the type of guy where you just love to show up his competitiveness. Like, he rolls a vehicle onto the board. I make a move. I kill the vehicle in one move. He's like, aha, I got you. And he plays a card that allows him to bring that vehicle right back onto the board. And then I kill it exactly in the same way I killed it the last time. That was fun. And he got mad and he walked to the door of the game store and he threw his dice across the highway. But, he was a different category of person. So it's not like, I just, again, this goes back to that personal responsibility thing. If you can put up with it, then put up with it. And if you can't put up with it, don't put up with it. And if you can't put up with it and remain at the table, that's on you.
Can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen.
Yeah. Anyways, this topic, I think we have done to death.
I agree. Let's talk about Care Bears, My Little Pony.
Sure.
Okay. I don't understand them.
Well, we are not the target demographic.
But I want to be a brony. Come on. I want to belong, and then change it to what I like and turn it into Ultimate Warfare or something. I don't know.
So let's see, what do we got here? Most of the comments coming in here have been about the topic that we've been discussing and possibly changing it. Like Cody's like, how about the micro games that I was talking about earlier? But yeah, this is funny because this is Jim was commenting on the guy who was on about this TMNT alternative and how it had safety tools. It was anti-capitalist, and yeah, TMNT was very much punk. And you have to the guys who created it were a couple of stoners, and but yeah, it's not exactly the most establishment comic ever, right? Let's see. Well, Cody, come on and tell us some.
Yeah, get on here, Cody. What the hell, man? You've been like
You
a
had the
ghost on
invitation. I even
streaming all
sent it
week.
to you privately, sir.
Look at that. Look
Even
at
though it's
that.
at
I do
the
the
top of
same
the
thing.
thing.
I do the same thing on my streams. I send Cody a private message.
And yes, Mar Hockman makes a great distinction. It is corporatism, not capitalism, that is a problem. Everything I have
agree.
around me and that I enjoy is from capitalism.
I absolutely agree on that.
I mean, corporatism is a bad thing. Capitalism is not. Rampant
Unfettered
capitalism.
Corporatism is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Baseline corporatism is a fine thing.
There are plenty of countries out there right now who have a capitalist economy who keep their corporations in check that are doing fine.
So, there's a town on Vancouver Island out west called Tofino. And Tofino has a city bylaw, which is you can have no corporate brand chain businesses within city limits. So in town, every store, every restaurant is something a local owns. Just outside of town, Walmart, Costco, McDonald's, they're all like looming over the town like they're going to charge one day into it.
Yeah.
But it's just, and I think that was a great idea for the people of Tofino to basically put the big convenience, big box nonsense 10, 15-minute drive outside of town. So that way, if you really want it, you can go get it. Or you can just support Bob at his hamburger
but the small
shack
businesses still get to take advantage of the convenience factor.
Exactly.
The proximity, the proximal convenience factor. Because we all know that we would even. I have in the past gone to the corner market where the milk might be a little bit more expensive because it's down the block. So buddy of mine who lives in Austria, he is Austrian, but doesn't just live in Austria. He was telling me that they still have sort of the guild system in remnants of it there, where the cities will only allow licenses, X number of licenses for particular businesses, to allow for those businesses to have room. So he's like, and as a photographer, he's kind of grumpy because he's like, in my town, the guy who has the license for the photography store, he sucks.
Yeah.
So there's the double-edged sword of that, but there are different methods in place. Now, how can we apply these to gaming? Oh, that city you went
niche
to.
Protectionism.
Yeah. Well, the Austrian example is based on medieval guild, mentality.
Think about this. I want to play D&D with you, right?
Yes.
And we've run 4 or 5 campaigns we played in, and Cody always plays the thief. And I want to play the thief, but Cody's playing a thief again because Cody always plays the thief, and Cody always gets to play the thief. That type of protectionism, like the gilding idea, is like, come on, man. Maybe I'll do a different kind of thief. Maybe I'll play something different. But Cody's like, nope, I'm the thief. You have to play something else. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen in my games.
It's a hyperbolic.
I know.
Shut up is what it is.
No, but actually, it's funny. I'm swinging that into another topic of discussion. I love D&D parties that are not optimal.
Yeah, I hate that.
What?
I hate optimization in parties.
Well, and I don't even mean like a hardcore gamist optimization. I mean in that sort of just standardized. We need a thief, we need a cleric, we need a fighter, we need a magic user. that's fine. If somebody wants to make sure that they have the bases covered, cool. That doesn't bother me so much. But I love seeing parties that are lopsided or maybe leave out
Mm-hmm.
a particular cornerstone of the party. Like, we're going to go without a wizard. Okay. Because that is going to be a very interesting time, because the dungeon exists as it was going to exist, regardless of whether you have a wizard or not. So when you run into that magically locked door, what are you going to do about it? You're going to either have to go back to town and hire a wizard to come with you, or search around, or is that important to you? I mean, I love seeing games like that. And of course, there's a lot of modern wisdom that, well, that's no fun. Well, it depends on your definition of fun. My fun is very much enhanced by the boundaries and the limitations in a game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like, which is funny because I love miniatures games, for example, where I can build my own force, right? Where I can like build it from the ground up. But that's because I know myself, and I will limit myself based on my theme and my concept. So even if I have an open sandbox to build whatever I want, I'm going to have a theme. And then there's a buddy of mine who I used to play games with back in the day. I used to play Warhammer with, who had this custom character back when it was a thing to make your own homebrew character for Warhammer Fantasy Battle. He had this character we called the Swiss Army Dwarf, because the fucker did anything. He did everything. It's like, oh, he flies. Oh, he regenerates. He casts spells and wields 2 magic weapons. Oh, he rides a magic beast. Okay. But yeah. I don't know. I find that parties that, even if they're like lopsided really powerfully in one direction, themed parties, like we're an all paladin party.
Yeah, it can be fun.
Knights of the Realm, right?
I got your lockpick right here. It's called my 18 strength. Let me at that door. It's just fun. But I mean, niches are good too, and I mean they exist for a reason. I mean, even with my game that I'm writing, I just recently put in an idea of a focus, so that people can actually have something to hang their hat on right out of the gate. Because if they just have nothing but choice, analysis paralysis kicks in.
Yeah, I mean, I and of course the massive flip side of that is you now have games like 5e, which are designed to work with any combination of characters.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a feature for a certain style of play. And I'm not down on 5e. Some days I want Rocky Road, some days I want Rainbow Sherbet, and so,
some days you want Rainbow Road, Mario Kart.
That would be weird. My taste buds are intrigued, but that would be weird. Is that Rainbow Sherbet with like almonds and marshmallows in it, or?
Sure, why not?
But
there's a law that every time you take a lick, you have to go, "It's me, Mario, Rainbow Road."
All right, I'm going to pull up a couple comments. Mar Hockman, gaming the system is a thing. Yeah, it is. You're right. But it can be good and it can be bad. I'm not down on optimizers as a whole in gaming. If somebody wants to make an effective fighter, let them make an effective fighter, because that's what they're going to be doing for the game.
Yeah.
Where it becomes a problem is when that person is striving to be the best fighter in the party, or the only fighter who's worth a damn in the party, or who wants to criticize other players for not taking an optimal choice, or only ever wants to do fightery things with his fighter character and doesn't want to engage with the rest of the game. It's an example, of negative optimizing, but making an effective character is not a problem.
And as long as they understand that there will be moments in the game where there will be no fighting, and you're not expected to sit there and disrupt it or just try and cause a fight because you're bored now and want to roll dice.
Yeah, those people can find another table. It's the person. It's the person who gets on other people for not playing the way that they like to play that bugs me. Another example, I'm going to pull from my own life. It's in the miniatures realm, but similar. It's in a shop, and I'm talking about my Imperial Guard army and how I have this massive infantry-based army. At the time, I had a full company, like 100 miniatures in metal, and how I jokingly made a comment in this discussion with all these other Warhammer players that I usually just play to see how long it can last. I don't even really play to win. It's more for me to it's more fun for me to just kind of play to see how long I can stay in the game. And this guy looks at me dead serious. He's like, "So you don't care about the game?" I'm like, "Fuck off. I'm having fun, and what the hell does it matter?" This is also the same guy who just talked about paying a guy to paint an army and then entering it in and winning the best painted army competition. Like, so that guy's definitely an optimizer gaming the system.
Yeah. You miniatures people confuse me, but God bless
RPG
you.
Grandma, welcome. And we had a couple other people. No, actually, nobody knew. All right, so Cody has a tale he wanted to share. Funny enough, the first real character I played was a thief. He tried to woo the princess, was caught by the guard, and fell to his death out of the tower. There you go. Half-elf thief. Ark, the half-elf thief.
Climb in peace, Ark the half-elf thief.
I'm going to throw this out to the chat. Throw into chat the name of your first ever D&D character if you can remember it. I will give you mine. Mine was Shagon Icehawk. And for better or for worse, that name. I had actually picked up the Rolaids Elves book, and it presented this new kind of elf called the Ice Elf. And I was enamored with this concept of ice elves. And so I made this ice elf, and I named him Shagon Icehawk because Shagon's a very elven-sounding name. And I was 9. That character lasted a while. In fact, lasted to domain play, and died due to betrayal by his allies in a war. He was also the character who, for the very first 9 levels of the character, I would constantly update the illustration on his character sheet to reflect everything he got, and also battle damage. I was that guy.
Mine was Lieutenant Commander Joseph Reese, Chief of Security on board the USS Lexington Constitution Refit class. He eventually went on to join Starfleet Intelligence and become a full Commodore, with his field of operations being over the Triangle sector. Great campaign. A lot of fun. Played it for years.
Cool. Yeah, Triangle's an interesting place to play, too.
Oh, yeah.
Because you have, it's the Triangle. You have what? Klingons,
you have the
Federation, and then the Orions tooling around in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's that kind of neutral no man's land.
Yep, well, it's fun times.
Let's see. Player with an effective fighter doesn't have to have the right. Yeah, exactly. It's the wizard doesn't get to sit there and whine because there's never any spell books. The cleric, do clerics actually complain? Most clerics I know never actually play a cleric other than their abilities. I've very seldom run into a cleric who's actually played as a holy man who's about his god. Just like modern day warlocks never play like there's some figure who they get their power from based on some sort of bargain. It's like that should be a big thing. Yeah. Yep. And the DM should be using that all the time. If you're a warlock who's who's bargained for his power, that minor entity who fancies themselves a god who can have clerics really is probably after your warlock to do something. But and most clerics, a lot of that's on the DMs, because I feel like the DM, if you got a cleric in your party, it should come up. Clerics of other religions should have an issue with the cleric. if there is that kind of animosity, it's not, it's not always going to be that. There's a lot of gods who are like, all right, cool, the more the merrier.
Literally was in a 5e game a couple years ago, and we were trying to figure out what characters to play. And my buddy's like, "You should play a warlock. You'd be really good as a warlock." I went, "No, why not?" Because I'm going to betray you all eventually. No, you won't. Why would you do that? Because I serve my patron. You are irrelevant unless you are furthering my patron's goals, sir. And at some point in time, if my patron tells me to do something that's going to leave you hanging, you're going to be left hanging. You don't have to play him like that. I'm playing someone who made a deal with a supernatural being for power. What kind of personality do you think does that, dumbass? You know?
Yeah, I mean, there's the flip side. You could always play that as the desperate person who made a deal, and
Sure.
and that's a fun character too.
Sure.
Sort of the Flying Dutchman sort of character, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we got a couple of answers here. We got Mar Hockman had Brianna. What was Brianna? What? That's a name. I only asked for the name, but yeah, if you want to give more. Thor the Fighter. I was 12. Well, great name for Thor. Diaz the Elf. Men's basic rules.
Was he Belcades in Gallantry?
Rule of cool. It's funny. Speaking of weird rule of cool characters, I was maybe 12 or 13 when I played this character. It's funny. I can always remember generally how old I was by where I was living because we moved around so much. So this would have been in the 164th days by the street. My DM let me play a bugbear fighter, and by the time we were done, this bugbear fighter was now a were-elephant because he got bit by an elephant with lycanthropy. Bit by an elephant. And then I had 3 boulders, like small boulders, or big rocks, whatever you want to call them, that followed my character around, and when I learned to control them, I could have them attack things by thinking about it. It's very, homebrewy stuff. What was funny is that the DM made my character have to learn to use those because I found them and they linked to him somehow. I can't remember how that happened, but I remember this miserable time in my poor bugbear's life where he would think about himself and they would start bonking him on the head. And then he would get hungry and they'd smash his food. He's he's out there in the woods why? Just want to make a campfire. So eventually he learned how to control them. He figured out with his low intelligence that his thoughts was what controlled it, and so we played it out and eventually had this were-elephant bugbear fighter wandering around with 3 rocks that would attack things based on thought. It was a weird campaign. We were 12, 13, but we had fun, and that is the important part. Let's see. Going through a thing.
Repeat your grandma. I just subscribed to your channel. I didn't know it existed, but I've subscribed now.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a channel either. I will seek it out and subscribe. In fact, let me make sure that is a thing. Don't make a liar out of myself.
Can I post the link? Will it post?
I don't believe
it did post. Yay!
Hey, muzzle tough. I actually always wished that my grandmother would have got into D&D because she would have been badass. She was this bohemian artist type who I always joke because I can always pick her out in any family photo of her and her siblings. She's from a huge 10 sibling Depression era family, right? And if you look at the line of kids, there's she's got a bunch of sisters and they all very much look alike, but you can always tell which one is my grandma. She's the one who's always got her hair is even in black and white. Her hair is dyed. Her glasses are much more stylish. Her hemline's a little higher. Her hair is a little bit more fancy. And then all throughout life, in the 70s, she had the little place in Sacramento with with like a little like separate lounge, and she had for a while was married to this Austrian tailor who was a very suave gentleman, and it's just she would have been a great RPG grandma. She would have just been eating up the table.
Yeah.
She was fun. She's amazing lady. She's not with us anymore, but when she had to retire to a I'm getting some back talk. Weird. When she retired to a assisted living home, one of the first things she did is start going around the place and restoring the art on the walls.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, she's she's the type of artist too who would paint or draw in any medium, whatever was handy, and any topic. She had this one painting watercolor she did of our cats on the farm, and they used to collect on the back by the back door on top of the outside freezer we had there. And she thought it just tickled her, this collection of cats. And so there's this watercolor painting in the family, the backdoor cats. And that was enough for her to paint a painting. I have an oil portrait of myself and my mother on my wall. Me when I was 4 and my mother when she was 16. It was like full size framed. My brother has one of him. It's just a very prolific artist, traveled the world. And thank you for coming to my talk about my wonderful grandmother. Shirley, I love you. But
someday I'll tell you all about my auntie Enid, who is still with us and is the only reason I ever had the courage in life to pursue artistic pursuits in a family of business people.
It comes from my grandma. People are like, oh, you're all artistic. I'm like, that's my grandma's side of the family.
Yeah.
My aunts and everybody on that side is all artistic. My mom is artistic, even though she never pursued it, which is regretful because I've seen her art from when she was a kid. But yeah.
Yeah, no, for me, it's my auntie. That she was the bohemian of the family and encouraged me to pursue things I liked. And, as a result, I've pissed my life away on sci-fi, fantasy, and creation and all that nonsense, and I wouldn't trade a minute of it.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys who's always got 1,000 ideas and never manages to see any of them through. The most I've ever accomplished on that route is my miniatures range. So,
no, that's something, man. That's an accomplishment.
it is, but
celebrate
I've
celebrate it right now.
Right, my company is Loud Ninja Games. I'm sold through Alternative Armies out of Scotland. By all means, go ahead and check it out.
There you go, and it's out of Scotland, so you get a complimentary headbutt with every purchase.
Gavin and his crew up in Girvan, Scotland, on the west coast of Scotland, are a wonderful crew.
Nice.
But let's see, the keepers of plenty of old vintage miniatures too, because they own the Asgard line.
Oh, nice.
And stuff like that. So let's see. Did I miss any money? RPG Grandma. I popped this up, but I didn't cover it. Club with a giant frog's leg. Interesting. Cool.
I think it was an elf that got swallowed. Maybe it was Cody's character who fell from the tower and landed in the frog's mouth.
Ribbit.
I'm gonna make it. The moat is the. Well,
let's see. We have the mighty Grimshaw, wielder of the legendary axe of Conaxle. Let's see. As DM, I avoid making the game easy for the best character in the party. As a DM, I don't make the game easy or hard for anybody. I just make the game.
Yep.
And the game is the game. If the game ends up being too easy for my players, well, then it's time for the. I won't even, or I try not to. I don't try to be all that absolute, but I don't try to even amp up a scenario. If my players have managed to know, let's say they know there's something going on at this keep, and they tool around with other adventures, and what's going on at the keep is really not important to the world. It's just a dungeon that they might want to visit because there's things there. And by the time they get there, they're much higher level and they can traipse through it. Okay. congratulations. Because at the same time, it would still be the same if they intentionally held off and prepped and built up their their abilities and did a Rocky training montage, whatever it takes, and then took it on. So I feel like I have a responsibility to my players to keep what it is, unless there's a story based version for it to get it more powerful. Because whether intentional or unintentional, if their actions have consequences, I also feel like their inactions have consequences, and the world needs to be consistent. So yeah. But if that keep is like got a bubbling, brewing evil in it, then sure, it might it might be tougher when they get there.
I enjoy watching them over prepare and then sabotaging themselves and getting super paranoid when they're having an easy go of it. And they're like, this is too easy. Something's afoot. And then they don't trust anything. They won't touch a door without, trying to detect magic. And it's hilarious just watching them burn all their resources. And then by the time they get to the big boss, they pissed away all their resources. And what should have been an easy fight for them is now it's a slog because, well, you're out of spells, you're out of potions, you're out of all this stuff you had because you were freaking out over every chest, That's how you do it, baby.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, I just, for me, it's actually gotten me in trouble running my worlds with a certain amount of consistency and verisimilitude and internal logic is why I don't play in my high school campaign setting anymore. We had this massive world that we created just over time, me and my friends, and just years and years of playing in it, and eventually it got to the point where and this is my brain, was having a hard time doing things in the world without going, well, if this happens, then this happens.
Yeah.
And then this will happen. And that means this is... So I had to scrap it. And ever since, I've been trying to find a new world to play in that I can keep playing in and do the same thing. So it's kind of bit myself in the ass by abandoning a world that I had developed over years with friends and input that from other people other than myself. So it was, not just my world. But yeah.
Well, player's going to play. It's the way it is. I like having an interconnected world where when you tug on a string, it pulls on something else and has consequences.
I do too, but it was leading to analysis paralysis, how interconnected it was.
That's different.
And that was at a point where I'm like, the world is just too alive. To quote Tom Hanks, I don't know where I am. But,
what is that from?
It's Mazes and Monsters.
Oh, that's it.
I don't know where I am. There's blood on my knife.
Yeah. I love that movie. That movie is so good.
On DVD.
It's so good. I don't know. People, like, I see always these videos on YouTube where people are like, it's a terrible movie. And I'm like, did you watch it? It is not at all a terrible movie. The acting's really good. Chris Makepeace is a fantastic Canadian actor, and he does a really good job in it. And it's fun. What are you guys on about? But
I've just got such a sad ending too.
Oh my god, it's so sad.
And because you expect that movie to end with him getting better, right?
No.
And at the end, he's not better. He's in a place where he's safe.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I was like, we ventured forth into the woods that one last time. I'm like, even then I was like, oh, that's sad. But that was coupled with, man, I want to go on a quest with a bunch of friends out in that big forest.
I think the only thing I had issue with in that entire movie was their 800 millimeter miniatures they used. This giant,
very much
level action figures,
hand painted, like cardboard cutout kind of things, is that they were going for. And if you want to put that level of craftsmanship into your game, but
they did the same thing in ET. Remember in ET when they're playing D&D, their figures are all like 6-inch, 8-inch figures. It's like, Jesus.
Yeah, they've got like the 54 millimeter pewter collectible miniatures. I
mean, from the Franklin Mint.
At least when they did Stranger Things, they're like, and Demogorgon, because I had that miniature. That's a Grenadier Demogorgon.
There you go. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
It was popular enough to where there was a guy who actually contracted the original sculptor to resculpt that miniature in modern 28 millimeter scale.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool.
I remember seeing something about that on Gizmodo or something somewhere. Maybe it was an N-World article. I am one annoyed Minotaur. Why are you an annoyed Minotaur RPG, Grandma?
I'm way behind in the chat.
It's okay. Cody says, I've got spells. I can fly.
Yes. The Great Hall. I think it was, it's interesting because so the book that it's based on, from what I understand, never read it, was not trying to condemn D&D, as I understand it. But most people didn't understand what it was trying to say, or they took their own meaning from it.
Yeah, no, he tried to basically talk about how the news media had completely misrepresented the entire situation.
Yeah, and he was very much of the mindset that this is not the game. This is troubled people who latch on to the game. The way I always talked about it when my mom and I would chat back in the day and in time since, it's like, look, people who are troubled are going to find a reason, whether it's D&D or their dog or the clouds or looking into their scrambled eggs one morning and going, this means something. They're going to find a way. It's just my buddy and I used to joke around back living through parts of this. Like if we drive off the road accidentally, like swerve off the road in the middle of the night and die, they're going to say that it was because of D&D, because there's a shitload of books and dice in the back seat.
Yeah. Clearly, they were attempting to summon a water elemental and drove off the bridge in an attempt to bring the game to life. What? No, they are just drunk, you idiots.
Tragic teenage D&D suicide pact.
But you know what I really like about being Gen X and having grown up in the 70s and 80s? There was this thing where people did stupid shit, and then other people stood up and ranted on about it, and most of us just got on with our fucking lives and didn't create rules to stop stupid people from hurting themselves. And then the 90s happened, and it's just been this never-ending. Every time I see a news article where, someone did this thing and now they're dead, and I'm like, well, there goes that thing for everybody, because we're all going to get it taken away now because one guy was an idiot,
Yeah, it's funny when I try to track that in my brain, I think it's funny enough, it seems to have started with the corporate PC stuff, where corporations, which were huge in the 80s, if you aren't from the 80s,
like they're so tiny now.
See RoboCop. But, well, they were we were entering into that, but there was that move that to start becoming politically correct on everything, and I even see it to this day. In fact, in the company that I work for, I'm constantly like, can't you just coach to the individual?
Nope.
Do you have to do a fucking new policy that affects everybody?
Yep.
Or not do something because example, when we were in the call center still, we had access to the internet for our own personal use. We were a telecommunications company, if I can speak. Go back to the top of the video where I mentioned I've been tongue-tied all week. I'm probably dying in my brain somewhere, but so we're an internet company, we're a video company, we all have access to the internet because sometimes you get bored and you might want to do something. And so we could connect our personal devices. Well, some dumbass was watching porn on his laptop in the office.
Jesus Christ.
First of all, what the fuck? But no, they didn't just shut his ass down or even fire him. By all means, fire him. Or at least discipline him. No, they did discipline him, but then they locked down the internet for God knows how long. And then finally we got it back. I've been with the company for 16 years, so I've seen a lot of stupid shit. It's like, oh, we can't do that because, like, for example, potlucks in the office. If you've ever worked in a call center, potlucks are a thing, and they're beautiful, right? Everybody brings in their food.
Especially when you have a diverse, multicultural staff and you get food from all over the world.
Absolutely. In our office, it was like Hey, you Mexican grandma, bring those enchiladas. Hey, you guy from Sri Lanka, bring your stuff. You know, you know, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And then, well, we're gonna have to get rid of potlucks because not everybody can contribute, and it makes people feel bad. And not every team does as many potlucks, and so there's some sour grapes. I'm like, well, okay, you know,
Okay. So when I was at Teleperformance as a trainer on the Apple Care campaign, oh, sorry, the Fruit Company campaign. Oh, wait, my NDA is expired. The Apple Care campaign. At the end of every training, we would have a pizza party. We would order a bunch of pizza and we'd watch a movie in class on the projector, and it was a great thing, and everybody knew we did it. It was fun. And then in one class, we're planning the pizza party, and one of the gentlemen, there was a lot of Muslim guys, but two of the Muslim guys were in the class. One guy said, well, it has to be halal pizza. And before anyone could say anything, the other Muslim guy went, no, it doesn't. He's like, yes, it has to be halal. And he's like, no, we have to eat halal, you and I, but we don't get to force other people to follow what we want to do. And then it turned into this massive argument that wound up going to HR and this whole thing. And what do you think the fallout of that was? Was it, okay, guys, make sure you get halal pizza and regular pizza for people, or hey, how about you all communicate with each other and do no more pizza parties. Pizza parties are forever banned now. And it's just like, thanks for that knee-jerk reaction, HR.
what is really dumb about that attitude too is I don't know of any time in the history of the office where if somebody was hungry and was sniffing around your potluck, you weren't like, make a plate, there's plenty.
Yeah.
I also don't know of any potluck on a team where if there was a dietary concern, it wasn't addressed. I
Exactly.
don't eat meat. Okay, here's a cheese pizza.
Yeah. And I mean, we do the same thing. If you can't bring food, you can't. All right, cool. Pick up paper plates. Pick up plastic forks. Go pick up styrofoam cups. I don't have the money for it. Here's $20. Pick up the shit and bring it to the potluck. Bring chips. Bring pop.
We even had a team who's like, look, you can, if you don't want to contribute, you don't have to. If you want to contribute, but you don't really want to cook, $10.
Yeah, I even gave money to people so they could bring something and feel like they were participating.
Yeah,
And
we
as for
had
this, people
so
sniffing
much
around.
in most cases. It was just so ridiculous. If you want some food, eat some damn food because people are taking it home anyways.
But for the sniffing around, we had a simple rule, which was everybody in the class got to eat their plate first, or got their plate. Then you scavengers can come and pick at the bones. But everybody who's a part of this gets theirs first.
Yeah, it's sad. Of course, now that we're all full-time from home, that's a thing of the past.
I can't have a potluck with my cats. They don't cook very well.
My team keeps talking about trying to figure out a way. We're actually talking about basically doing a recipe exchange on the team where everybody trades recipes and then we make recipes from another person and enjoy it at home.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a fun throwback to that. Our company actually did do a thing where they for the longest time, they were sending out Grubhub credits to people.
Oh, wow.
Like, all right, everybody go and order from Grubhub.
Yeah, we had that when I was at SureWeb. We had that once the pandemic started, because every month we would have what we called our IT cafe, where we'd get pizza, wine, food, and all that kind of stuff. It was a great day, and we'd listen to the updates about the company and how we're doing, and give out awards, and people would get monthly bonuses, and it was fun. And then suddenly we're all working from home. So for the first two IT cafes working from home, we all got an Uber Eats credit sent to us to buy some food. The third month, that shit wrapped up real quick because they saw how expensive it was, and they were like, well, never mind.
And we used to have this great thing. So back in Washington, where I was living, there is a water park. To some states are like, whatever, I'm in Missouri, which evidently is like one of the water park capitals of the universe. But back in Washington, there was a water park. And so every summer they would have the corporate picnic at the water park, which was cool. When the water park had its separate like event space, we would actually have catered food there and everything, and everybody would just meet there. The water park closed that down, but then you would get your ticket and you would get meal vouchers, which was cool. So you can go around to like the concessions, and that was neat. And if you couldn't make it on the day, they had alternate day tickets, which was really super cool. Because I didn't want to go and hang out with my coworker.
Yeah.
And
No, I'm good. Yeah.
and at the time, my wife and I were both working for the company. So not only did we take myself, my wife, and our kids, we also took our kids' cousins for the day, which was really fun.
Nice.
From 1 year, but they stopped doing it
Yeah.
because they're like, well, we're not, we're losing too much money because people are taking alternate day tickets, which we have to pay for, and they're not using them.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of like, to me, that's sort of a dick move. Like, you wanted to do something cool, then just do something cool. Whether or not people take advantage of that cool, it's like getting mad because you make somebody a pie and then they don't eat all the pie. Were you giving them the pie because you wanted to see them eat it, or were you giving them the pie to do something nice for them? You
Yeah.
know, because
Yeah.
and even if they never touch the damn pie, if they took the pie and you felt good giving the pie, who the fuck cares?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was working for a company called Sitel, when I first became a trainer, so this is 15 years ago, I had what I called my loyal army of Filipina ninjas, which was all of these Filipino wives who worked there, and they all had other jobs. Like it was this, they had two jobs because that's the way they do. And when I was training them, and then ever after, every day they would bring me food every day. And one worked at Walmart, so she'd always bring me like boxes of one bite brownies or this or the other thing. And then the other one would always cook something. The other one who worked at a grocery store would bring me Filipino treats from the Philippines. I put on 20 pounds in like 2 months with these women. I finally had to go, stop. You're going to kill me. Just stop.
Oh yeah. I did the food, and that was the other thing I loved about the office, because it wasn't always potlucks. Sometimes somebody would just like, I brought in a pan of lumpia. You want some?
Yep. We literally had the worst reaction. So at Teleperformance, we had this one girl. She loved to bake. She was an amazing baker,
Oh
and
yeah,
she
there's
loved to bake
always that
cookies.
person in the office.
So
God
every
bless
day
them.
she would bring in a basket of cookies or little pound cakes or whatever. She'd bring something and share it with the team. And then of course security showed up, and you can't have food on the floor. That violates regulations. And then they took it to the HR, who then took it to, and we got the no cookies and all that. And it was like, and when they told her, watching her face, she was like the saddest human being all of a sudden, because she would bring joy to people every
That's her
day.
love language.
Yep. And they would say, no, you can't do that anymore because you want ants, we might get ants. It's just like, oh my God, stop.
Trust me, I'm sure you guys can afford some some pesticides, some pest control. My wife, but it's funny because of course, not only in a call center is there the food that's made to bring to the office. There's the food at home that comes into the office all the time. Every fall, as soon as people started seeing pumpkins hit the shelf, they'd ask, "Is Jen cooking yet? Is Jen baking yet?" My wife.
Oh, nice.
It's like, and I don't feel bad throwing out her name because she's only one of 8 billion Jens, right? Uh, but and it's like her pumpkin treats, pumpkin cookies, pumpkin rolls, pumpkin, she doing the pumpkin thing yet? And my wife, she goes, as soon as the pumpkins hit the shelves, she goes out and buys as many sugar pumpkins as she can, roasts them in the oven, purees it, freezes that stuff like cordwood in our freezer, and throughout the year we've got pumpkin. So it's like, it's it was fun. But yeah, people would like, is Jen doing the pumpkin thing yet? Dude,
Yeah, but
do I look like I gained 10 pounds yet? No.
there are some people in this world who just take so much pleasure out of feeding other human beings. They take so much pleasure out of it. And to deny them that pleasure because of arbitrary nonsense regulations is really silly. In Quebec, I can no longer, when I was a kid, we could, and there were tons of people in my hometown, farmers' wives, who would basically make preserves or sauces or pickles or whatever, and then they'd jar them up and they'd sell them at a table at the local grocery store. And then somewhere in the early 80s, the law came down from the provincial government. You cannot do this because we cannot regulate the control of how the food is produced.
Yeah, and that's that kind of that attitude hit everywhere. Like the tamale ladies, disappeared from in front of the Walmarts. The Girl Scouts were starting to run into problems with where they could sell their cookies. It's just, which is funny because that's an organization, so you could track that shit back easy. But it's part of that comes down to an overly litigious society who doesn't want to take personal responsibility. If
We
you're
don't
buying
have
food
that.
if you're buying food from somebody in front of a store on a card table, there's a certain level of risk involved.
No, understandable, but we don't have that in Quebec. We have Napoleonic law here, so the hardest thing to do in Quebec is sue someone. You really have to be like it's nigh impossible.
So it makes
So
no sense.
it makes no sense. And then what they did in my hometown, there was a guy who
Maybe that
had
is
a
why it makes no sense, because they figured, like, well, with it's so hard to sue some people. People might just throw anything in a jar and call it preserves. I don't know.
might be, who knows? But like in my hometown, we had a guy who basically had a hot dog stand, and he would hang out over inside the local bar on Fridays and Saturday nights when all the kids were home from college, and we'd come out at 3 a.m. Hot dogs, awesome, and we paid him, and we'd get hot dogs, and life was good. And then the government got involved and said, well, you don't have 4 walls and a roof. You can't do this because you need to have 4 walls and a roof to provide food. So the bar, not being stupid, went, okay. And they built him a chalet right outside the bar at the front door where he could go inside and sell his hot dogs,
Oh yeah, that's that happened in Seattle with the hot dog carts, because when you're standing in line for a music venue,
Mm-hmm.
or you're coming out of a bar drunk as hell, a street
Mm-hmm.
dog is great. And
Mm-hmm.
it got to the point where Seattle actually has its own signature dog combo, like Chicago dogs or a thing. There's a Seattle
Yeah.
dog. And it was great. And it was a way for people to make money.
Yeah.
And it was a way, in a lot of cases, I have no doubt that it was a deciding factor in determining where some people went for their clubbing enjoyment.
Yeah.
We're going to go down and we're going to get that street dog, and then we're going to go to the bar that's right there because convenience, or that place doesn't have street dogs, so we're not going to go there. Yeah.
When I first got to Vancouver in 95, I'm walking off the SkyTrain. I round the corner, and there's the first hot dog stand I've seen outside of New York City. And it's and this is the chain there. I don't know if they have them in Seattle, but they have them in Vancouver. It's called Mr. Tube Steak. And the problem is back here in the East, tube steak is a term for something else, and it's not a hot dog. So I was just like, really?
That's one of those things that's done on purpose, though. It's like it's one of those, like, we're gonna make an ironic or unironic.
I
name.
hope so, because man, it was just like, really, you're calling your company Mr. Tube Steak?
All right, so we're coming up on the last 15 minutes of the stream, because I gotta call it at noon.
Cool. Can I talk smack about a couple of people real fast?
Sure.
I'm greatly disappointed in Cody and Chris, who participated in the chat but didn't take advantage of clicking on the link to join us and actually talk with their voices. You broke my heart, and I think both of you are now dead to me to a certain extent, and that's just the way it is.
It's not a sentiment shared by this channel, but yeah,
and
you guys should really
Sean too. I saw you posting, Sean. I saw you posting.
Yeah, I mean, you all are welcome to come on, especially on these days where I have zero topic. But I think these are important days, because even though I had no topic, we still talked about cool things like micro games and why they were neat, and the Judges Guild supplement that I picked up, and we did go into the safety tools rant, but I think it's a topic worth talking about. I think there's benefit there. Take it or leave it. Don't listen to the people who want to scream about it on either side.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah. It's kind of this is a week. I've been doing so much overtime lately that these weekends where I have my whole weekend, I don't know what to do with myself. And so last weekend I couldn't do overtime because of some other things going on. And this week I'm not able to get overtime because there wasn't a lot of it, which bugs me. So now I'm like, I got 3 days off in a row. What the hell am I going to do with it all?
Nice.
But so yeah, I could not think of a topic. Well, I couldn't think of a topic that I wanted to talk about, so I just decided to do the AMA kind of a thing, chat thingy. But I'm not one of those guys who's got big enough opinions about really anything to where I feel like I must be heard. I have this much to say about such and such. It's why my YouTube channel originally petered out. I'm like, who am I talking to?
Where are my fanatics?
Well, I was watching channels, a little bit of an aside. I was watching the channels who were taken off, and even the ones who weren't, in the particularly, super like cool demographic. I'm like, there's Nerdarchy, who's just a bunch of beardy grognards doing their thing, anyways, right? But even the amount of work they were putting in, I was like, I don't want to do that. I have no interest in doing that. I'm not trying to grow my channel to get big or to go pro or anything like that. And then and the amount of work, because I talked to them, like, dude, my channel's not growing. They're like, well, you have to do this. And I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to script and edit and.
Yep. This is why I always say, if this becomes my job, remind me to shoot myself.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy I'm glad that I just started showing up on John's stream, and then realizing, and I'm glad that the live stream format seems to be gaining some momentum, and that StreamYard makes it so easy because now I don't have to fuck around with OBS or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
And while I have OBS, and I have had OBS in the past, and I've even used OBS, I don't like it. I'm lazy.
OBS gets rid of my arse sideways.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, the worst combination is lack of ego and ADHD, because there's nothing to motivate me to finish anything. It's like, I could do that cool thing, but meh. There's 8 other cool things I could do.
Ooh, flowers. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, see my table full of miniatures and not miniatures and other projects that are years and years old. But yeah, it's I'm supposed to be getting in on Cody's OSE game. I'm waiting to hear information on that.
I officially got invited finally by Cody, but I decided to pass just because.
I invited myself.
I did too.
I'm like, so OSE, got any room?
Yeah, I had
playing.
I had Chris tells me there's an OSE game happening. Where's my invite, man?
You could have been like really obsequious about it. It's like, I really wish I could find an OSE game to play in. I really like OSE.
Ever since the diagnosis, nothing would make me happier than just having an OSE game to play. That would let me live every day to the fullest.
Wow, laying it on really hard.
Oh, yeah. If you're going to do it, man, go full, like, Shalom Shabbat with it.
Yeah, I don't know how early you tuned in, but did you see the cool, like, just goofy artwork that the guy from Judges Guild put on my packaging?
Oh, nice. That's really nice.
I love it. This is the type of stuff that makes me want to order from somebody again.
Yeah. That's awesome. What'd you buy from them?
I bought their reprint of Wondrous Weapons, which is a
catalog. I saw you posted about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a simple print on demand, but I did acquire an original copy, and I'm like, and then accidentally, while looking for that, stumbled on the Wondrous Weapons reprint, which means I can have my original copy polybagged, just sit there and go, and
yeah.
And then have one that I can use. What?
Can I confess something just between you and me? Right? We don't share this with anyone. This is just between you and me. Okay, like this is just me talking to Eli here.
Yeah.
I really, really regret that I can't just play OSE and use all those great Judges Guild things because of my public stance against D&D and the D20 based gaming. And sometimes I look at you all having your fun, and I'm like, why can't I do that, man? Why can't I do that?
The power of Gary compels you.
No, I can't. I've drawn my line in the sand. I must adhere to it.
That's the nice thing about lines in the sand. If you drag your foot across them, they disappear.
Or if the tide comes in.
Yep. Tide of Gygax.
Yeah, no, I do miss running the simplicity of D&D sometimes, to be honest.
OSE is, I think, where my line for old school is. There's a lot of games that try to do interesting things with old school stuff, and they elevate themselves, and then I'm like, but then I could just play a different game. Why am I not playing Rune Quest or 5e or 2nd edition D&D? OSE has that simplicity, and the OSE advanced options, I think, is really sweet spot. John has put it really, really succinctly when it comes to the OSE Advanced. It feels like the version of D&D that I played when I was a kid, when I didn't realize that they were different things, BX and AD&D, where it was this mishmash, and we didn't play with all of the AD&D rules, but we played with some of them. Most of the ones we played with are the ones that we knew about and liked, and then there was a whole host of other ones that we just didn't even know about because they're buried in those books. Love the books, but they are god-awful as far as manuals on how to play a game.
Well, for me, it's I mean, I like the advanced stuff. There's some choices he made that I don't agree with, but that's okay. That's every game. And ultimately, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to wind up house ruling it. It's going to happen. There's nothing I can do about it. And I'm going to bring in the stuff I want, to house rule it and have fun with it. But that's the thing. It's so easy to do that. And I loved playing OSC when I played it. But the problem is everybody wanted to play fucking 5th edition, because the tools online made it easier and all that fun. One of us. I was one. Do not speak to me of the ancient lore. I was there when it was written.
Yeah. I mean, there's games like I've trod through the OSE since it kind of showed up. And it came out of my 3.5 burnout. When I tried running 3.5 for a while and just got fed up. As a DM, it was so much work to make something for 3.5. So I started looking at old stuff. I had my old books, like I still had my AD&D stuff, but I didn't want to dig them out. And I was also looking for something that would be available and accessible new for my kids. So I picked up like Labyrinth Lord, which is okay.
I have issues with Daniel.
You have issues with what?
Daniel Proctor. He and I don't get along, sadly.
I don't know
the man. We did, and then we didn't.
I don't know the man. I just know the game.
So
I went through that, and then I checked out also when it came out. What is it? LFG, Low Fantasy Gaming.
Okay, yeah.
Which was in Low Fantasy Gaming I discovered after I started playing 5e. I missed 4e. So when I picked up LFG, I realized, okay, here's a guy who's got kind of an old school core, and he's integrating some concepts from 5e to make this kind of old schooly feeling game. I never got a chance to play that. Discovered basic fantasy role playing, which is, I bought heavy into that for no other reason other than the fact that if I'm going to get other people to play an old school game with me, this is the easiest way to get them to do it, because it literally will cost them nothing. And even if I need a physical book, fine, $10, $5, whatever, buy the fucking book. I'll buy you. I bought 2 copies out the gate just to have one extra. So anyway, that was the one I got into. And then OSE came out, and I'm like, I cannot deny that formatting.
Yeah.
Just the appeal of that layout.
No, it's very good.
That's an engineered layout. It's pleasing. So it's still got style. I don't feel like I'm looking at something that's like, I joked about it earlier on about Starfleet battles, rule 1.1.2, rule 1.1.3, it's not that technical, but it's clear, it's concise, and it's pleasing. It still has artwork. It's still got, a style to it to where I feel like I'm picking up a game book. But it is exactly BX, but just in a way that doesn't require a knowledge of the book, not the system, the book, to be able to use it. Because face it, all that old D&D stuff, there's so much knowing the book that is alongside knowing the game. That's why for the longest time I had to play with the physical books if I'm playing the AD&D stuff, because I could grab a book and just know where stuff is in there from like muscle memory, I guess. It's like, this table should be about here. But yeah, it's yeah, OSE just really just the only problem with OSE, that the reason I don't have a physical copy yet is for the longest time it was kind of nebulous which version of it to buy and whether was it available and
And they kind of
where
really
can I get
muddied
it.
the waters up a little bit on that. Great design, shitty marketing.
I think that's really what's held it back as far as being bigger than it is now, is that because I've seen it in communities all over the internet. Which one do I buy? Is this Does this include this? Where can I get it? Oh, I tried to buy it, but they're sold out. You know,
Yeah.
just an availability issue and a too many overlapping versions. Like if you pick up, from what I understand, if you pick up the advanced, it has the basic stuff in it.
Yes.
It just also has the advanced, which is great because I didn't want. I have a very limited gaming budget, and so I didn't want to repeat my purchases. I didn't want to like buy the basic and then buy the advanced and realize that, oh look, everything I need is in one. I could have only spent half the money.
Well, yeah.
And I'm not a completionist collector enough to say I must have all the OSE books on my shelf. No, it's not going to happen. The
Yeah.
other thing I don't like is that the OSE Adventures, while the OSE game very much is here's BX, play it. The OSE Adventures, from what I've seen, are still in that weird version of OSR that is, it was gonzo and weird back then. No, it wasn't.
Yeah. Now, everybody's into their setting the Dolman Wood, and I'm like, I read it. No thanks.
Well, even not just Dolmanwood, which is funny because the official Dolmanwood is going within his own system now, which
Yeah.
really ticked people off. They're like, why aren't you going with OSE? It's like, well, there's that OGL thing. It's like, whatever. But yeah, the adventures that have come out for OSE, I'm like, all right. I mean, granted, I can use the entire library of TSR stuff and anything that was published by all the third-party folks back in the day. But yeah, just if you're trying to get a product off the ground, and it could be that I'm the one who's wrong because perhaps
No, it is the children who are wrong.
more likely what it is they are marketing to what the current view of what the OS of the old school was, as opposed to what it actually was, which is there's this prevailing concept that it was weird and wacky and gonzo. See Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Yeah.
When that was only a very minor corner of most of what was being published, at least by TSR.
And if you want to go down that weird and wacky gonzo hole, give me Ralph Bashke's Wizards. Give me Mike Plugart. Give me what's his name's Chode series. Give me the real wacky stuff that was coming out in the 70s. Give me it. I'll play a game set in that stuff. But don't give me this half-ass step between where you just want to make stupid puns at the table and pretend you're being goofy and you're being gonzo. You're not being gonzo. You're just being a bunch of dads.
Yeah. Oh, we got this giant dungeon that's shaped like a cheeseburger.
And stop. That's so wacky and cool.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like it, I mean, I'm gonna end up going over, but hey, whatever. Gamma World example. I want to run Gamma World, and so I like Gamma World first and second edition, mostly the second edition. Anyways, the reason I want to run Gamma World and not something that is Gamma World-esque is because all the other Gamma World-esque games are, like, for example, so the one that I have that I looked at for a while was Mutant Future. Mutant Future is just a reskin on top of Labyrinth Lord.
Yes.
To the point where the rules, the ability scores are identical to the mechanics of Labyrinth Lord, which makes it feel like I'm just playing reskinned D&D.
Yes.
Gamma World, while based on D&D, was Jim Ward going, I like D&D, but you could do these things with it. And he changed D&D to where it plays differently.
Yes.
And so it has a subtle feel that's different. And then people are like, well, why don't you pick a modern post-apocalyptic game? Because modern post-apocalyptic games take themselves too seriously.
Because they're either Mad Max, Road Warrior, or The Road. And The Road is not enjoyable role playing. I'm
Or there
sorry.
is this weird inseparable idea that the apocalypse means zombies or whatever. I
Why did
like
no one? In the 80s, remember when they did all those Italian Mad Max ripoff films,
yeah.
Warriors of the Wasteland? How come no one made a role playing game set in that stuff? No one did. No one touched that stuff.
Well, that kind of stuff fits in the Gamma world also is the thing,
Sure.
and it does. It's I mean, there is some elements of Road Warrior in Gamma World, even if you go to like the second edition of Gamma World, where Larry Elmore does the art. Um,
Mm.
you're seeing like guys on dirt bikes and stuff there with mohawks, and so I don't feel like it's, but at the same time, it still has that fun charm of an apocalypse that could never happen. And I would say that even Fallout, a lot of people are like, well, what about Fallout? Fallout still takes itself too seriously. Fallout Fallout is the serious, overly serious older, younger brother of Gamma World. Gamma is like Fallout is the brother who grew up in the shadow of Gamma World and goes, oh well, you're weird. Like you're the weirder older brother, and I don't want to be like that, but I still think your stuff is cool. Yeah, it's it has the 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 beats of Gamma World without having the style of Gamma World.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean where I was going with that is like, I don't want to. I'm very particular about when I play a game. I want to play that game, and I want it to for the certain feel that it presents. I don't want to just play a reskin. I've done a lot of that in the past. Usually out of necessity, like there is no game for this, so I'm going to use a system and reskin it. That's different. That's adapting.
Yes.
But yeah, RPG Grandma points out, like Cyclops with lazy eyes, angry turkey people who want revenge.
Have you looked at Far and Away Land RPG Grandma? He does a lot of weird, goofy stuff. Like he does legit Gonzo in that game.
Let's see. Just looking about some of the back stuff here. Yeah, there's just a lot of commentary on OSE and stuff. I think it's a good place to call it for the day. I really enjoyed the stream today. Thank you for
It's
coming
fun
on, Bear.
times.
Thanks for the chit chat in the chat. We were up to like 11, 12 people watching today. That's a pretty sizable number of folks. I am now following RPG Grandma. Other folks who have streams who are in here are, well, Bear. So if you want to pitch your stream. I know you love
My stream
self-promotion.
isn't for you, and I don't care. And don't subscribe to me. And if you are subscribed to me, please unsubscribe immediately. Thank you.
In other words, Bear hates self-promotion. His channel is good. Watch it. He's got a lot to say. We also have From the Hilt, who has a channel. He's got his own game system that he talks about a lot there.
Len Harrow.
Len Harrow, yes. And then he's also a huge G.I. Joe guy. So, and just lots of fun stuff there. Mage's Musings. And we can't forget the Puppet Master himself.
Mm-hmm.
Great channel, especially if you like OSE. And if you just like seeing what those old game systems were capable of when somebody who knows them and wants to use the system as it was put together when it's firing on all cylinders, I guess if I was to put it away, because the way he runs his games with all the little reaction checks and stuff like that, things that as a kid I found annoying, but I see the wisdom now. Yeah, check his channel out.
And GM Cody's been doing a great series on the history of some games. Check that out for sure.
Oh yeah. If you're a miniatures guy, he's been doing some history of miniatures games in there. That's cool. And then he's just good on general gaming lore stuff.
Cody's just a good shit, and we're all in love with him. We just have to accept our bromance with Cody, everyone.
You're not wrong. I talk to the man just about every day now. And let's see, any other channels that snuck in here? I know Mar Hockman has a channel.
Hungar was here earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, Hungar was here earlier. Let's see, but I think that's about it. Thank you, everybody, for coming on. I just heard something go boom on the floor upstairs. My wife is moving around, which means that I'm going to go up and make breakfast. Later,
Alrighty, well,
folks.
thanks for seeing you, man. Be good.